The next trillion-dollar technology race has begun. This time, it's not about just going to space. It's about using it to revolutionize life on Earth. Right now, 4 out of 10 people on this planet have zero internet access. That's 3.2 billion people locked out of the digital economy. But that is about to change because the world's biggest companies are betting billions on satellites that can beam high-speed internet straight to any smartphone, whether you're in the middle of the ocean, on top of Mount Everest, or deep in the jungle. And there's one company leading this charge. It's called AST Spacemobile, and its technology is so game-changing. Not only is Elon Musk trying to copy it, but AT&T and Verizon dropped their rivalry to partner on it. On paper, AST's business model looks like an infinite money glitch, and its stock has surged over 200% this year. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand if this is the next 10x stock or the next space SPAC that'll come crashing back to Earth. Before we begin, remember my YouTube channel is not financial advice. These videos are for informational purposes only. You must do your own research as investing is risky. Let me first explain the magnitude of the problem AST is solving. 400 million new mobile phone users will come online this year, mostly in developing countries. Take sub-Saharan Africa, for example. Smartphone connections there have doubled in the last few years. In fact, smartphones now make up 4 in 5 connections globally. There's just one big problem. Traditional cell tower infrastructure can't reach these markets profitably. Building terrestrial towers in rural Africa, remote ocean regions, or mountainous terrain costs too much. Mobile carriers have no economic incentive to deploy infrastructure where population density is low and revenues can't justify the cost. This creates a gap. Billions of people who own smartphones but can't use them. The economic cost is mind-boggling. Regions without connectivity see slower GDP growth, limited access to education, and exclusion from global commerce. And even in developed markets, dead zones remain a huge problem. I can hardly get a signal at my house, and I live in Silicon Valley. Think remote highways, national parks, disaster zones, rural communities. There are connectivity gaps everywhere, and satellites are how you solve them. But current solutions are expensive and limited, and none work with the phone that's already in your pocket. This is what AST Spacemobile is solving for with their satellites. Connectivity for existing smartphones without any new hardware. Just pull out your phone and get your connection straight from the stars. So what kind of entrepreneur would be crazy enough to try and put cell towers in space? Abel Avilan grew up in Venezuela, a place where connectivity wasn't a given, it was a luxury. He saw what it meant to be on the wrong side of the digital divide. In 1999, Avilan founded Emerging Markets Communications, a satellite company focused on maritime and remote markets. It connected cargo ships in the middle of the Pacific, oil rigs off Nigeria, even remote villages with no terrestrial infrastructure. In 2016, he sold EMC for $550 million, but instead of retiring, Avilan couldn't sit still. Just a year later, he founded AST Spacemobile with a new mission: turn every smartphone on Earth into a satellite phone. But when he pitched the idea, people thought he was out of his mind. Previous ventures like Iridium and Globalstar went miserably, and they ended in bankruptcy. But Abel secured seed money from Vodafone in the EU and Rakuten in Japan to get started. With that capital, he ran the company with a lean startup culture, and the way he proved the concept was genius. Instead of launching a satellite into space, he launched a phone into space and kept the satellites on Earth to prove the tech worked. In 2021, AST went public via SPAC, raising over $460 million. And the company began amassing more and more partnerships as it showed its vision wasn't just a pipe dream. AT&T came on board as a partner and investor. Then Abel got Verizon to join too. AST's pitch was so grand, Abel convinced 2 bitter competitors to share their spectrum. This doesn't happen unless the opportunity is extraordinary, and it's not just those 2 mega players. AST has over 50 relationships with carriers that will give them access to 3 billion customers. Some of the biggest and most technologically advanced companies are also invested. Google, American Tower, Nokia, and TSMC have all validated the business. Now, since we're on the topic of understanding what companies are shareholders in the stocks you're looking at, it's the perfect time to tell you about today's sponsor, Moomoo, a powerful trading platform that equips retail traders with free research tools you'd pay hundreds of dollars to access elsewhere. When you look at a company on Moomoo, you can analyze the biggest shareholders. If the whales are holding large chunks, it could be a good sign. Another great feature of Moomoo is being able to analyze insider trading. Seeing if insiders at a company are buying more stock than they're selling is an important part of due diligence. Next, Moomoo has this really cool industry themes section. So, for example, if I want to look at other space stocks, I can quickly find new investment ideas in that industry. Now, Moomoo has a special offer for my US audience, where you can get $100 in cash rewards and up to $1,000 of NVIDIA stock after making a qualified deposit. So head to the link in my description or scan the QR code on screen to join me and the 27 million people worldwide that are using Moomoo. So what's the game-changing technology that's getting Google, Verizon, and AT&T so excited? To get the world connected, AST's plan is to deploy 168 satellites into low Earth orbit. Now, the big thing you should know about AST satellites is they are huge. Their 900 square meter phased array antennas are roughly the size of a basketball court. Most smartphones are designed to reach a cell tower up to 72 kilometers away. AST satellites need to pick that signal up from 10 times further. They solve this through sheer antenna size, which enables the satellites to act as a repeater between the phone and ground-based antennas connected to existing carrier networks. This is what helps AST communicate directly with unmodified smartphones using standard 4G LTE and 5G protocols. The real shift here is there's no new app, no special phones, no external hardware. Your existing phone connects to the satellite exactly like it would to a terrestrial cell tower. The performance metrics are pretty mind-boggling. Speeds of 35 Mbps download and 3 Mbps upload with no line of sight needed. The service works indoors, on planes, or at sea. While AST only has 6 satellites in orbit with a goal of 168, the technology proof points are strong. BlueWalker 1, launched in 2019, successfully established a direct link to cell phones on the ground. Then came BlueWalker 3 in 2022, a 1.5-ton test satellite with a 64 square meter antenna. This enabled live testing with unmodified smartphones for voice, video, and data. To promote the tech, Vodafone, AT&T, and Rakuten have all demonstrated live FaceTime calls over AST satellites that are currently in space. It's one thing that the world's biggest telecom companies have vetted this technology with investments. It's another strong stamp that they promote AST's product to the public. And that leads me to the next section, the insane business model some investors are calling an infinite money glitch. If AST can execute, the economics of its business get silly fast. So let's dive into the model. The first thing you should know is that AST doesn't compete with mobile carriers. Instead, they partner with them. Carriers white label AST's connectivity as their own service and split revenue 50-50. AST handles the satellites, while carriers handle customer acquisition, marketing, and billing. For consumers, it's likely the service will begin as an optional add-on to your cell phone plan of $5 to $10 a month and will likely just be included by default in your plan in the future. Now, working with carriers has benefits beyond distribution. AST can borrow the carrier's existing spectrum licenses, eliminating the need to spend tens of billions of acquiring their own. But here's what's absolutely absurd about AST. They project profit margins between 90 and 99% once operational. That's software level margins for a space tech company. So let's get into why. Once the constellation is deployed, incremental costs go to zero for adding more customers. The satellites are already in orbit, the ground infrastructure is already built. That means every additional subscriber is pure margin, and we're talking about billions of them through AST's carrier partnerships. Another thing to note is that people won't use satellite connectivity constantly. It will only activate when ground infrastructure is unavailable. Each satellite, which costs just $20 million to build and launch, could support thousands of simultaneous users through oversubscription ratios that work like insurance. That means AST can oversubscribe satellites at ratios of 10,000 to 1 or higher for basic voice and text. The company has also said at full deployment, they'll need less than 1,000 employees, keeping CapEx a tiny percentage of revenue. The math is pretty wild when modeled. By 2030, AST management projected $16.4 billion in revenue and $16.3 billion in EBITDA. If they hit those numbers, AST would rank among the largest and most profitable companies in the world. But conservative scenarios are much better to model off of. If we add a 2-year delay cushion to management's original projections, we get to 467 million subscribers by 2030. At $2 of average monthly revenue per subscriber, that's $12.4 billion in annual revenue. With a 97% margin, that's $12 billion in EBITDA, and using a conservative 20x EV over EBITDA multiple, we get a $243 billion market cap by 2030. Compare that to just $23 billion today, and there's 10x upside. But AST has a long way to go before it gets there. So what could derail the space phone revolution? When it comes to risks for AST, let's address the elephant in the room first: competition through Elon Musk and SpaceX. Going head to head with Elon could be viewed as suicide, and it's inevitable that the space phone industry will be a duopoly. But let's dig deep into the differences between AST and SpaceX's satellite internet division, Starlink. Starlink has two businesses. Their core business is a fixed wireless business where you need a dish or a terminal to get broadband internet. More recently, they began working on direct-to-cellular or D2C tech like AST. Starlink's D2C technology came from acquiring a company called Swarm in 2021. Now, Swarm built satellites for Internet of Things applications, not cell phones. Their antennas are too small for high-bandwidth mobile broadband, which is why Starlink's D2C offering is limited to emergency texting with T-Mobile. Of course, Elon knows this needs to be improved, so the company has said their next generation Starlink V3 satellites will have larger arrays. But V3 requires SpaceX's Starship rocket to launch, and Starship isn't working reliably yet. AST, by contrast, has a strong technical edge because they designed their satellites from the ground up for D2C broadband. They're ready to launch dozens of satellites over the next 18 months, while SpaceX will need time to develop and launch with this larger array tech. Now, of course, the big advantage to Starlink is this built-in launch infrastructure. AST, on the other hand, depends on its biggest competitor, SpaceX, to launch its satellites. The good news is AST has already contracted for 60 launch slots with the company, and if Elon made an attempt to slow down AST, it would not only be nonsensical business-wise, but would likely trigger antitrust lawsuits. AST's big edge comes from its AT&T Verizon partnerships, which collectively account for 70% of North American market share. And as Blue Origin and Rocket Lab rush to enter the medium launch market, diversification will increase over time. But of course, the risks to AST do not stop there. Unlike SpaceX, this is not a business yet, and it doesn't have access to unlimited capital. The stock is truly the epitome of high-risk, high-reward investing. The company is tearing through cash as it attempts a highly aggressive target of 45 to 60 launch satellites by the end of next year. While it has $1.5 billion in cash, AST spending is skyrocketing, hitting nearly $400 million in OPEX and CAPEX in Q2 alone. Delays are a standard with satellite businesses. Weather, component shortages, and launches create dangerous timing risks, and AST is already years behind their original schedule. Their original 2020 goals had them completing their entire constellation in 2024. And while AST's management projects revenue of 50 to 75 million in the second half of this year, delays could easily push those numbers out. If AST needs more cash, they may have to sell shares at unfavorable prices, which will be further exacerbated by a market downturn or change in sentiment. And even if AST deploys their constellation fast, the regulatory side could be a minefield. Spectrum isn't just a technical detail, it's a scarce national resource, and governments treat it like a strategic asset. That means AST has to negotiate on a country-by-country basis, often against entrenched telecom incumbents who have deep lobbying power with their governments. Delays, restrictions, and political pushback are inevitable. But what might the world look like if AST can execute over the next 5 years? If you are watching this video, you are blessed with an internet connection. It's just crazy to think that in 2025, 4 in 10 people don't have access to it. The World Bank published a pretty crazy stat. They estimate that every 10% increase in broadband penetration in developing countries raises GDP by 1.4%. Global connectivity could generate an unfathomable amount of economic value. A farmer in rural Africa can access market prices in real time instead of selling crops to exploitative middlemen. A student in a remote village can stream Khan Academy, MIT classes, or my YouTube channel so they can learn about stocks. Telemedicine would suddenly become viable in regions where the nearest doctor is 100 miles away. If AST connects even a fraction of the 3 billion people currently offline, you're talking about a company that could seriously benefit humanity. The story isn't just about whether this stock 10x's, it's about whether connectivity becomes a universal right rather than a privilege of where you were born. The return to society here might dwarf the return to investors, but it makes AST one of those rare opportunities where making money and making the world materially better aren't in conflict. That's why I own this stock and have included it in my asymmetric bets portfolio in Autopilot. And at the time of this video, I'm already up over 30% on the stock. On Autopilot, you can link your brokerage and copy my stock portfolios automatically. And you can join dozens of people copying my portfolio at the link in my description. But before we go, if you want to learn about another space tech company that has huge potential, check out this video I made about Rocket Lab that's gunning to compete with SpaceX in the launch market.